1, 2, 3.
Hello and welcome to Green Queens, the perfect podcast for imperfect environmentalists. We're your hosts, sustainability and climate presenters Imogen and Abbie, and this is your guilt-free guide to living a little greener. So adjust your crowns, let's get green.
Hello and welcome to Green Queens.
Hello and welcome to Green Queens, the first proper episode.
Yeah, we've faffed around with this so much, haven't we?
We have faffed around, but I think it's been quite an important faffing around, trying to see, okay, what might work, when might this go out, how do we make sure that, we don't sit on it too long and it becomes really dated. So, yeah. But we're confident that this is going to be the first one.
We're also confident, having tried every single room in your wonderful house, that this is the home of Green Queens.
And lovely videographer Chris, who is behind the camera, has been like, well, the space is a bit better in the kitchen, the light's a bit better, and we're like, yeah, but pink and orange
and red and loveliness.
And so we've made his life difficult, but I think it'll be worth it.
It will be worth it, yes.
Yeah.
So this is the first official episode of a brand new shiny podcast called Green Queens. Mm-hmm. We are the Green Queens, but also I feel like we're just starting out this very cool collection of people that we're going to be bringing together, and we want to meet lots of people and make a big, juicy, green community.
Yeah, and I wonder whether we should use this episode to kind of introduce ourselves and go into a little bit about why we wanted to start this podcast, what we think it might be, so people know what they might expect over the next.
And also we should
probably
introduce ourselves.
We should introduce ourselves. So Abbie, tell us, who are you?
My name is Abbie Dewhurst, / Golby. I am married, but I kind of kept my professional name professionally. I am a weather and climate presenter, a sustainability presenter and expert, and I've been a weather presenter at the BBC for about 9 years, but last year I kind of changed things up a little bit. So I was in like a staff job where every single day I would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I would do a weather forecast on BBC television and radio from 4 a.m. till 2 p.m, 4 days a week. And I loved the job. The job was so fun, but after 8 years of doing it every single day, full time, I mixed things up a little bit and went freelance. So now I can do a real mix of things. But yeah, I got that job when I was 22 and I had dabbled in various different things in the media industry before that. But that was my real kind of, when I got that job out, when you're like, this is what I was meant to do with my life. So I very much found my passion in the weather and climate, and therefore have kind of delved a lot more into climate change and sustainability and started making a load of content around that. And so now I'm in this lovely space, which is, I don't know about you, but I feel like in the last couple of years, so many more people have taken an interest in this side of things, where maybe 5 years ago I was speaking about trying to live more sustainably and people were not really that interested. All of a sudden, I kind of feel like post-pandemic, people are kind of waking up to it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So it's been a really exciting couple of years, I think, with that development, and then with my kind of shift into a different sphere of this industry. I'm married, I have a rescue dog. What else do you want to know?
Well, I think the amazing thing, because you have been presenting the weather for, I say, about 9 years. Mm-hmm. And that is something that every time I see you, and every time when I first met you, like my main questions were like, so what time do you go to bed?
Yeah.
Because you're going to bed earlier than your husband, do you just sleep in separate rooms?
Yeah.
What's your is your weather forecasting wardrobe the same as your home wardrobe? And lots of sort of practical questions. But I think the other thing that's worth mentioning is that you create really, really amazing, super informative content.
Stop.
And I remember, was it last year when everyone went nuts for the Northern Lights?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was probably some of my most viral content about when I posted about the Northern Lights. So obviously we get given so much information. For anybody that doesn't know, a weather presenter does not read off an auto cue. We're not told what to say. You're kind of briefed by chief meteorologists at either the Met Office or Meti Group, who the BBC now do their weather in association with. And then it's your job as the presenter to kind of go away, collate all of that information. We have a kind of 15 to 20 page document that we have to sift through with all the forecast data on. So there is so much information that you're given on a daily basis, and that's updated like hourly as well as looking at all the observations, the satellite, the radar. So a lot of people think it's a really easy job where you just roll up, you get your hair and makeup done and you read off an auto cue. It's not the case at all.
You do not get your hair and makeup done.
Don't get your hair and makeup done. Have to do it myself. Yeah. Have very much streamlined that process, we'll say. But so yeah, in that, I remember on the weather conference that we were on, which is a kind of 15-minute Zoom call, it being almost like a throwaway comment that there's a chance of seeing the aurora. And so then I had a little look into it. It must have been a quiet weather day because it was, sunny and dry and whatever. I had a look into it and realised that actually the geomagnetic storm, which is what you need in order to see the aurora, the Northern Lights, was actually really high, like the highest I think I'd ever seen it. So the weather forecast, everything was just playing into it. So did this video about there is a really good chance, and probably one of the best chances that we're going to have in a decade to see it.
Breaks my heart.
And it didn't see it. But this video went totally viral, and also what helped is that it was the most spectacular aurora display.
Yeah.
So then I feel like people were seeing it and being like, whatever, but then realising that I was right.
Yeah.
And then, even like the few days following, there was still this incredible Northern Lights display. So the video just kept going and going and going. So,
well, the video was great because it kind of explained what was happening, why there might be a high likelihood of seeing them, your best opportunities to see them, etc., etc. But then you got so many lovely messages of, my granddad has wanted to see the Northern Lights his whole life, and now he has, and it's all thanks to you.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
It was amazing. And I think there's been a really interesting transition through the media industry. Like when I wanted to get into it, I remember watching like Davina McCall on Big Brother and thinking, oh my God, that's what I want to do. The media industry nowadays is very different to that. You don't have 5 channels, you have 500,000 channels, and everybody's got a phone and everybody is kind of broadcasting on social media. So there has been this weird transition, I think, since I've been a TV and radio presenter, that actually there is people expect more from you. You do kind of need to be a content creator as well.
Yeah.
So I think that was a really good example, particularly then to take back to producers that are kind of a bit more old school and don't really see the value in social media, to show actually, especially because we're, I was broadcasting for the BBC, which is publicly funded and it's supposed to be serving everybody in the country. Well, the people that aren't watching BBC One, at least they're still accessing the BBC services through social media. So it was so wholesome, and you're right, like one of those real pinch me moments.
And I guess that alongside, all the other kind of content that you create actually has really paved your way to talking about some more sustainability stories on Morning Live as well.
Yeah. And that's something that I think I started doing some stuff for Morning Live, which is a national show. It's on after BBC Breakfast. It's kind of like the BBC's version to This Morning on ITV, which has obviously been running a lot longer. So that's been really lovely because with the weather, you literally have 1.5 minute, 2 minutes max, really. And you have to give them the forecast. It doesn't really give you that much scope to dive into anything else or get to go out and meet people and stuff. So Morning Live's been lovely because it's been the opportunity to go and like really story tell, really get into some juicy stuff, some nice stuff as well. There's been so much doom and gloom, and I think particularly when it comes to like climate and sustainability, it can be super daunting and stressful, and people just bury their head in the sand. So whenever I'm coming up with ideas or pitching things, I really want it to ultimately be something that people come away from feeling quite kind of warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
Easy said than done, but...
Well, and I think this is always the challenge with any kind of broadcasting in any sort of platform, is that sensationalist topics, doom and gloom topics, they get more traction, they get more engagement. And it's nice to be able to create room for those like, hang on a second, this is someone doing a really, really good thing for a really, really important cause and, shining a spotlight on that. And I think the one that you did so beautifully, which was so lovely, was the teddy bear one.
Oh, the teddy bear one was so sweet. So we'll hopefully be able to get these sorts of people and companies on and chat to them and whatever. But the long and short of it is, there was a company that I found on TikTok actually, because some of their videos were going viral, where old teddies that people were clearing out, because like charity shops are at max capacity, you can't just bin them. A lot of them are made from all sorts of different things, and some of them hold a really special meaning, but you don't want them clogging up your house. So this amazing woman called Charlotte Liebling founded this company called Love Before, where she got people to send in their old teddies, and if they needed mending or cleaning or sprucing up, she would do that, and then she would sell them on with some of the money going to charity, and they would come packaged, often with a little story about where they've come from and the life that they've lived. Oh, it was just the most special day, and really very kind of apt for me, because my parents moved out of our family home last year, so we had to do a big old clear out, and there was loads of old teddies that my parents were like, we don't want them anymore. I was like, I also don't want them in my house, but I can't see them go in the bin forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was nice to send them there.
And I think we've definitely had this conversation before, but like, we're in our 30s, we know full well that teddy bears are an item. But we also grew up on Toy Story.
Yeah.
And the idea of just sort of putting them in the box on the street is just like so totally heartbreaking.
Not happening.
So, you can make sure that these teddy bears are going off to have a lovely life, to bring joy to another child, and also lovely sustainability message in there as well.
So yeah, I honestly feel as though I'm quite literally living my dream by getting the chance to go out and tell those sorts of stories for the BBC as well. So that's a bit about me. TV, radio, decades worth of industry experience, God knows how. And the only thing that was missing, I think, on my Spotify podcast playlist was something like this, a podcast that was had the thread running through it of green sustainability, but also that was non-preachy, easy listening, we hope, somewhat entertaining, we hope. Two mates, again, we hope. I hope it stays that way. So again, this kind of feels like the sort of last piece to the puzzle, which is very wonderful and very nice that we get to spend a bit more time together.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, we went out for dinner last night. We've had lots of lovely chats. It's this is just a ruse for us to hang out together.
But that's me. Let's do you.
Okay.
So we're, like you say, we're in our 30s. Both have these kind of careers that we've paved gradually, slowly, somehow. Talk to me a little bit about yours.
So mine is definitely a little bit more wibbly through the world of broadcasting and presenting than yours. So I was an engineer by background, so I
impressive.
I was just
Women in STEM.
So people are often like, women in STEM, and I'm like, yeah, you should see the calculations I do on my phone. It's really, really mortifying. But I did do engineering, did mechanical engineering, specialised in a lot of kind of fluid mechanics, turbo machinery kind of stuff.
What's a fluid mechanic?
So, for example, how air moves over a car, for example, or how heat moves through a system, or how steam moves through a gas turbine. So, really, really loved that stuff.
It's a good job you do. It's all I'll say.
So I've got a shoot coming up, and it's about turbo machinery, and I was like, I did my thesis on this. I did my thesis on computational fluid dynamic modelling of ultra supercritical turbines.
Sorry.
I do
How many
not
words
know.
was that?
I don't know what any of them mean. And I was like, God, this is... I obviously understood them at the time, but some time has passed, and I those engineering muscles are not necessarily in full force. But so I did engineering, and then I went and worked for Jaguar Land Rover. And I adored working at Jaguar Land Rover. I worked in the aerodynamics department, so making cars more streamlined. I worked a bit in the design department, and I absolutely loved how, you've got this engineering product, for example, how does air go around this car? And then you'll be like, well, if we lowered it by this amount, or if we brought, the bumper in by this amount of degree or whatever, it would be more efficient. That has impact on fuel economy, blah, 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 blah. But then also you're sort of squaring that with another engineering department might say, well, we don't want that because it's not very good for reducing the temperature in the car, for example. The designers might say, well, that totally ruins the profile of the car. So I loved it for the fact that you're having these technical discussions, but actually there's so much negotiation and sort of balancing different requirements. So I thought that job was just amazing. But I think throughout that time, I secretly always wanted to be a Blue Peter presenter, and I couldn't squash that dream. So then, after I left Jaguar Land Rover,
I feel like there's still time for both of us.
Well,
Blue Peter.
I was at a shoot the other day, and Blue Peter were also there. And I feel like I shouldn't even admit the story because I don't want to get anyone in trouble. But we were filming, and I'll come on to who I film with, and also Blue Peter were filming, and I could not be cool. I was like, oh, maybe I'll go and say hi. And I was like, no, be cool. And then after about an hour, I went up to the producer and was like, I'm a really big fan. I grew up in Blue Peter, I have so many questions. And he said, did you ever get a Blue Peter badge? And I was like, no, really devastatingly, I didn't, but my sister did. And he reached into his pocket and he produced this Blue Peter badge, and he handed it to me almost via a secret handshake, as if we were exchanging some sort of illicit substance. And I held it in my hand and was like, oh, the day has come. So I do at least have a Blue Peter badge. But yeah, so, throughout that time, I was doing lots of technical stuff. I was working in sort of also more technology comms as well. So taking engineering stories and then, packaging them up to be a bit more digestible to general Joe public. And as I say, wanted to be a presenter. And then an opportunity came up on a show called The Fully Charged Show. And I sort of noticed that on their episodes, which are on YouTube, there'd been a couple of comments of, oh, you should get Imogen in as a presenter. And I was like, this is quite convenient. And I screenshotted them and sent them into the team. And I was like, do you know, I can't help but notice a couple of these comments. It would be wonderful if
Was it your dad?
I have asked every member of my family, I'm like, is it you?
Yeah.
They promise me it's not, but you know, you never know.
You never know.
And so for the past 4 years, I've been presenting full-time for a show called Fully Charged Show, another one called Everything Electric Show. They live on YouTube. We also have live events, and it's amazing because we get this opportunity to delve into the world of electric cars, the world of clean energy, and I cover a lot of stuff sort of looking at these technical kind of stories and how can we, you know, talk about them in a fun and, well, hopefully fun and engaging way. So to give an example, we've done lots of electric car reviews, but we've done things like, well, very shortly, we're going to be going to the world's first brewery that runs on an electric heat pump.
No way.
Looking at really cool, like solar installations, sort of the next wave of solar technology. Lots of bits and bobs like that. So it's just such a pleasure to be able to find, again, these positive stories that are going on in the world. These people who are just quietly getting on with like amazing things, and to be like, hey, amazing person, we need to tell the world
spotlight,
about this. And have some positive stories and provide some context for this, you know, world of sustainability and climate change, and to prove that people are working very hard to make a positive change.
I think as well, like the world has been made now, or society, particularly here in the UK, is so much so that everything was just streamlined so that people could make an easy option and a quick option and like a cheap option in a lot of instances. But now all of a sudden we're realising the mistakes of all of those easy, cheap, convenient options. So there's so many people that will have to change so much about, not have to, but realistically, like we could really do with people starting to make some serious changes in their life. And that feels quite daunting for people when they're like, oh, life's already stressful enough. You know, this works. I've got this direct debit set up for it. It's cheap. I'm straightforward. I know what I'm doing with it. To then be like, well, hang on, actually, you know, you've been putting petrol in your car for the last however many years. Fancy plugging it in.
Yeah.
It's people just check out, and it does feel quite scary and daunting. So I feel like it's nice for us to have been able to use our platforms in different ways to hopefully streamline that process. And if we manage to do that a little bit more through this podcast as well, make it super digestible. And I feel like because a lot of what we do is heavily backed by science and is still in the infancy, you know, a lot of the conversations are quite technical and quite overwhelming and quite hard to get on board with and understand. So if we can just hopefully dumb it down, simplify it.
Well, 100%, because I find with my sort of Fully Charged Show, Everything Electric Show hat on, a lot of what we talk about is sort of the next frontier of technologies.
Yeah.
And that really appeals to early adopters who want to be at the forefront, want to adopt this stuff.
Really like, are fascinated with the detail.
100%. And as such, are kind of willing to accept that sometimes it's a bit tricky. There are teething issues in the beginning. And like if something isn't perfect, they're like, we don't care. We want to be first. But we're now entering into this world where, you know, you said it earlier, like climate occupies so much of our everyday, like the weird weather that we have, it's in the news every day. And so actually we need to get past this world of, you know, it's not just about the early adopters, it's about how is this really, really digestible to the mainstream, and not just digestible, but the more appealing option. And I definitely see that on the electric car side, that, you know, certainly electric vehicles at the moment are a bit more expensive than their petrol diesel equivalent. But that's not true in the second-hand market. They're totally equivalent in price. There's loads more lower-cost electric vehicles coming, and owning an electric vehicle is so much cheaper because you can charge it up for basically nothing if you have a home charger. Public network, you know, again, some teething issues there. But it's sort of, we're going into this world where it's so much more exciting to talk about it because it's not just the sustainable thing to do, but it might be the more fun thing to do, it might be the lower cost thing to do, might be the better product or what have you. So it'd be really fun to get into a lot of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
in this podcast.
Exactly. I have written you some quick-fire questions.
Okay.
Because I feel like this is a really good way to get to know each other, isn't it? So I have 10 questions for you. They are quick-fire, which means that you need to answer them as quickly as possible. Okay, question number 1. This feels very kind of first day in a new job vibe, but we're going with it. Tell me something surprising about yourself.
Ooh, what is surprising? Well, I feel like I've already alluded to the fact that I'm actually a giant nerd. So that is
Didn't want to say
surprising. Also not surprising given that I am 30 and such a millennial cliche. I am currently doing my yoga teacher training.
There we go. That's relative. Well, not surprising to me because I feel like it's a bit like if you're vegan or if you're a CrossFitter, you will have told me about it and you very much have mentioned the yoga teacher. So tonight I'm doing yoga teacher training between the hours of 6 and 9 p.m.
Actually, in my diary for every Tuesday until June. Yeah, I have mentioned that at least 78 times.
That's good. Nobody else here knows. So now they do. Question number 2. Favourite Sunday activity?
Oh, okay. Perfect Sunday is to not set an alarm and to wake up, but it still be like pre-9. And be like, oh my God, look, it's not even 9. We've still got the whole day ahead.
Tell me you're 30.
Oh my God, I know. And then to find some sort of delicious baked good from a local bakery, some sort of elaborate long walk.
Okay.
Some kind of red wine in the pub in the afternoon. Sunday night film. That is the perfect Sunday.
This is why we're friends. Best work shoot you've ever been on?
Oh, that's a really good question. There have been some really, really good ones.
You've lived a life. We need to dive into some of these.
Oh my goodness. Because there have been some really glamorous ones, you know, various trips to exciting places like New York and Vietnam and all sorts of things. But then also there's been amazing ones in the UK in places that I don't know anyone in that location. They're not holiday destinations. And those are weirdly enjoyable. But maybe the best one... I mean, I went to a copper mine in Canada and saw the world's biggest electric vehicle. And it honestly, it was like a mining truck and it was like the size of a house. And that was just sort of one of those moments where like, I would have no other reason to be here other than this job. And it was through the mountains, like in the middle of nowhere in Canada, which was just absolutely sensationally beautiful. But that's probably...
You've been like all over the world with work, haven't you?
I have been really lucky to go to some really exciting places.
The deepest, darkest depths of the world.
But something that I'm sure we'll mention many times on this podcast going into the future. I've also been to Hull like 5 times in the past 3 years.
I'm from Grimsby, don't knock East Yorkshire and Northern Lincolnshire.
There's so many things going on there. So those are equally really nice.
Yeah, okay, fair. What are you most looking forward to with Green Queens?
Ooh, so I feel... we get a chance to catch up, which is really fun.
I was secretly thinking if you don't say that we get to spend more time together, then I might just walk out.
Yeah, we might just need to end it there.
Yeah. Anyway, it's been really nice knowing you.
Yeah, great. That's the end. No, I think we were looking at the list of people we'd like to invite on as guests. And there are just some extraordinary people on there who basically we've collated our wish list.
I was going to say, none of them are confirmed.
None of them are confirmed.
None of them are even remotely confirmed.
I don't even know about this yet. But once we've got them on, that will be some really fun conversations.
We're gonna work hard to get somebody in this corner.
And look at them.
Ted the dog. He's on the floor. Okay, that's a really good one. Well done, well answered. Okay, who's the most famous person in your phone book? Darling, don't say me.
I mean, you probably are, to be honest.
At last.
Most famous person in my phone book. This is going to be niche.
Okay.
Mate Rimac. Now, Mate Rimac is the CEO and founder of a luxury car company called Rimac. And annoyingly, he's in his 30s and he's like established this massive car company. But he probably is the most famous. But I appreciate that is very much
that's a niche famous
car fans out there.
Yeah. So there'll be some people watching like, wow.
Yeah.
And I think 80% of people not a clue.
Oh, they will not have a clue. And I mean, the other one is, who's probably up there as well, it's a guy called Peter Rawlinson, who's CEO of a company called Lucid. Lucid's a car company in California, but Peter Rawlinson is is kind of an automotive legend, and he was, I think, in the first 5 employees of Tesla.
Oh, that's cool.
In this, I did an interview with him not so long ago, and he referred to Elon Musk as his former boss, which I thought was a real burn, and I thought was great.
That is so good. Okay, sum yourself up in 3 words.
Oh. All I could think of was my 3 favourite foods, which is not adjectives. Nerdy.
Yeah.
Bit strange.
Okay.
Charming. Can you describe yourself as charming?
You are charming.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. Sum me up in 3 words.
Sum me up. I would say absolutely charming. I would say very funny.
Oh.
And very beautiful.
Oh. Thank you. Best eco hack.
Best eco hack. Use your leftovers.
What are you going to say then? Use your left hand for something. I was like, okay.
No, use your leftovers because food waste it has an astronomical impact on the planet. And I think it's one of the things that you can do without giving it much thought.
Really easy. Yeah, love that. Okay, this is going to be interesting because I feel like you have never done anything like this because you are so squeaky clean. But naughtiest thing you've ever done?
Oh, okay. We should caveat that is appropriate for this podcast.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Tell me the non-appropriate for this podcast bit after.
Yeah, we will. Naughtiest thing I've ever done. This is, I can't believe this is what came to mind. So, and I really don't want to put myself in the category of like Theresa May running through fields of wheat in this, but
you're so going to, aren't you?
I really am. But like, I actually confessed this to a priest when I was 8.
Right, Fleabag.
Honestly, well, I grew up in a like going to Catholic church, and did your first Holy Communion. When you're 8, you have to go to confession, and the priest was like, have you argued with your sisters before? And I was like, I have. But the worst thing I've done is, so when I was 5, I got a toy post office. It was brilliant, but it didn't come with much plastic money.
Right.
And school had a lot of plastic money. And I was like, brilliant, I'm going to scoop up loads of that and I'll put it in my post office at home. Problem solved. I had it in my coat pocket, and my mum heard this like plastic jangling in my pocket and was like, where did you procure this plastic money? And I was like, from school. And she was like, okay, we have to go into the school and talk about this. So she then took me into the school, and she had a word with the teacher, unbeknownst to me, to say, I know this is like a bit of a misdemeanor, but can we take it really seriously so that we nip this in the bud?
What, money theft?
Yeah. And so we had to take it like very seriously. And I met this teacher years later, and she was like, it was very difficult not to laugh. But I really felt tremendously guilty about that for many years, and then confessed it to a priest some 3 years later. But that was the first thing that came to my mind.
What was the priest's response?
Well, I think, again, they had to be very sombre and take it very seriously. Yeah. I think they were probably just trying not to laugh.
To be fair, the fact that you stole not just plastic, but plastic money.
I know.
That could have gone. It could have been a slippery slope.
Well, I think they were very right to nip it in the bud.
Yeah. Move on to Monopoly. Before you know it, you're in an actual bank.
Well, this is it. I mean, the other one, I did use my dad's gym membership for like a good 2 months, and he got very cross about that. He was like, there's no way that you look like your name is Tom. And I was like, you're also correct. But
okay, so I think what we've established there is that you're not very naughty. You certainly haven't been since you were 5.
I'm an honest John.
You are, absolutely are. Such a square. Okay, question number 10, and this is very apt for you. What do you love more, a bullet point or your husband?
That's such a good question. The thing is that maybe I love my husband because he loves my bullet points.
There we go.
And I should say that him and I, we worked together and we were friends for a long time before we eventually got married. And so I feel like we're both engineers by training. Mm-hmm. We both like really appreciate a bullet point and kind of taking whatever is going on and being like, okay, what is actually going on here? It's these 3 things. Yeah. We can put in these really neat bullet points. So I feel like there's probably a Venn diagram of like husband, bullet points, shared love of bullet points. And
I've never met anybody in my life who loves a bullet point more. It doesn't matter if we're planning a podcast, taking over the world, or where we're going to go for dinner. You will respond to me with some form of bullet point.
But I just,
I love it, by the way, because I get very easily confused and find a lot of information quite overwhelming. So the fact that you're like my chat GPT.
Well, do you know what? Something that I've discovered when I've met other women who work in predominantly male-dominated environments, of which engineering largely is, often there'll be these huge discussions in meetings where people are just kind of like saying things, not to diminish what they're saying, but like throwing a lot of stuff into
A lot of
room.
words.
Yeah, and I really feel that whoever is the sort of slightly odd one out in that capacity, and often in engineering environments it will be the woman, their superpower is to like listen, and to reflect back with like 3 bullet points. And then it's like, you distilled whatever just went on there into this really logical sort of path forward. And like, they haven't said anything new, they've just collated, digested, distilled. And that is why I love a bullet point.
Yeah, I also kind of feel like your job as a presenter is not necessarily to be the expert, but is to be the person that manages to expertly squish down a lot of nonsense and jargon into really digestible bits and pieces of information.
And I do find like when you're writing a script and sometimes you like share it with, the director or the editor, and they see this sort of large volume of text and they're like, oh my God, that's such a long piece to camera. I know that you're going to mess it up like 10,000 times. It's going to really like ache their backs holding the gimbal. And then they're like, oh, we're going to have to get so much B-roll to kind of like patch over all of your mistakes. If you put it in bullet points, they are totally duped into thinking that like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So maybe that's my slightly sneaky way of using a bullet point.
I love it. One of the first things I noticed about you, and you will continue to fight the bullet point fire. I think,
really will. And, sometimes they might be a little star.
Yeah.
Or a little box.
Yeah. Oh,
they will
sometimes
be there.
it has. What is it when it has like a set, like you have bullet points and then the bullet point has a bullet point?
Oh yeah. I would be lost. I would be so lost without a bullet point. I would also be lost without my husband. So, I mean, it's also terrible that I didn't immediately say my husband, obviously. But,
Excellent. I feel like we know you very well off the back of the quick-fire 10-question round.
Well, I also feel we should have shared these questions before because mine is quite
the object
different.
of the quick-fire.
Okay, I've got 10 for you then.
Okay. Did you bullet point them?
I absolutely did, and I not only did I bullet point them, but I also numbered them. I'm going to bring my book over. Okay. I might deviate from this list. Okay, so vegan or flexitarian?
Flexitarian. So I do eat meat.
Yeah.
I eat fish. I eat everything. Literally, I think I'm the least fussy that you'll ever meet. I did try I tried to cut out meat. Successfully. I didn't need it in my life necessarily, but and same with dairy. But having friends that are nutritionists, and also I'm from rural Lincolnshire. I now live in rural Yorkshire, big old farming communities in both. I have friends and family that work in those industries as well. There is a level of kind of of course I have a level of appreciation for where our food comes from, but also balance. I just think moderation in everything. Yeah. So I don't eat loads of meat. We don't cook loads of meat. Anything we buy, we don't really shop in supermarkets. We're very lucky that we live near a market town called Otley, has loads of butchers, it has a gorgeous deli, it has a fruit and veg market every week.
Yeah.
It has refill shops. We're so spoilt with it, and we love the process of going and doing a food shop in that way. Emptying granola out of a refill thing into Tupperware. Honestly, find me anything more that brings joy to a 31-year-old woman in life who is married and living in rural Yorkshire. That is one of life's great joys. So absolutely no problem with vegans, absolutely no problem with people that eat absolutely loads of meat. I just think if we can try and balance things out a little bit and know the facts around it. Know the facts around how much emission comes from red meat. Know the facts around, I don't know, vegans being low in iron or whatever it may be. I have vegan friends. I cook a very good vegan curry.
Yeah.
But I personally love a chicken wrap every now and again.
Oh,
and a Sunday roast.
Yeah, and I think this is something that we absolutely need to explore in this podcast. And I think what we want it to be is that it is not always so binary as a decision of like full vegan or, you know, big red meat for every single meal, that actually taking the time to understand your choices and to make those informed choices, and that balance. And as you say, you know, I remember I did a panel discussion in Yorkshire where it was talking about how should diets change to support the environment, and there were loads of farmers in the audience, and I really didn't do that panel very well, because I didn't necessarily take into consideration like, okay, this is how is this local economy and community being supported, and how do we have that conversation in an empathetic and collaborative way. So great answer.
Thank you.
Instagram or TikTok?
TikTok. Those little sweets.
That just goes to show that I am not on TikTok.
Like grandma.
I know, oh my God, I am such a grandma.
Okay, good question. I feel like I spend more time aimlessly scrolling on Instagram, because I do still like the kind of the process of, I like storying, and so I like people I like people vlogging their day on Instagram story. But reels on Instagram kind of annoy me, because they're just trying to be what TikTok was like 5 years ago. So I loved TikTok in lockdown, and that's where I really got into it. And I just feel like because it didn't have any rules and regulations, people were just messing about with it, and it just became this thing, and people were being so creative because they weren't being so polished. So I think that's what I like about TikTok, is that it feels a little bit more authentic than Instagram, which certainly did do in the early days. I think, as with anything, the more established it becomes and the bigger followings people get, the more they kind of polish themselves and become a bit more squeaky clean. But sometimes when Jake, my husband, and I are in bed, and like, this isn't going somewhere weird, by the way, just so you know, we'll just be like, I don't know, drifting off to sleep or waking up on a Sunday morning or something, and I'll just be like, do you have a TikTok session? He doesn't have TikTok, and he doesn't really get on with social media. He's very kind of straight-laced, loves a book, very sensible man. And he'll be like, go on then. And I go on my phone. It feels like I have this kind of access all areas approach. And it's just because I don't go on it loads and don't spend those time, I feel like my algorithm is a little bit crazy. And therefore it serves us up the most insane mix of like dogs doing crazy things, people being hilarious, people making recipes, dancing videos, sustainability stuff. It's just this amazing mishmash, and it can entertain us for solidly like 20 minutes.
Do you know, we have a really similar thing. I mean, not on TikTok, but definitely on Instagram Reels, where it'd be like, okay, it's your turn to find a funny video. And then we'll just both there and be like,
so lame.
It's so lame, but so glorious. Okay, Radio 2 or Radio 1? Have you transitioned?
Oh gosh, okay, this is awkward because I have been on Radio 1. So it's really difficult for me at the minute because, like I say, do lots of kind of sustainability content, have been on a show called Life Hacks on Radio 1 as a sustainability, commentator, I guess.
You were
expert.
amazing.
Yeah. I've done various different things on there, like in the build up to Christmas, how to have an eco Christmas. Absolutely love that show. Used to be called The Surgery. So I feel with Alid and Gemma Kearney. So old school Radio 1, Greg James, Scott Mills, Nick Grimshaw, Gemma Kearney, all that. Fern Cotton. Oh, I love Fern Cotton so much. That is still kind of how I think I see Radio 1. So obviously it's gone through this massive transition in recent years, and I had the absolute privilege of hosting the show Life Hacks a couple of years ago, around Christmas time. So I really want to still be there because I'm young and hip and cool and feel like I'm trying to be down with the kids. However, occasionally a song will come on and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm really here for this. And so I will flick over to Radio 2. Radio 2 is on all the time in our kitchen. The dog loves Radio 2. And now I'm at the point where some very good friends of mine, Owain being one of them, has the early breakfast show on Radio 2. So obviously I have to listen to him because I adore him. And another friend of mine, Ellie Brennan, has just got the gig with Scott Mills on the breakfast show doing the travel. So because I'm such a loyal friend, I feel like the transition is happening. And I'll be totally honest, once Greg James steps away from Radio 1, I feel like that will be knee-cutting times.
Surely he's going to Radio 2.
I know.
Surely. It has been this really weird thing with Scott Mills starting on Radio 2 and being like, I've been transported back to being 15 and Radio 1, and I'm like, this is why they do it. This is why it's so sensible.
They've hooked us in.
They really have.
We are. I think we are two pretty loyal now Radio 2 listeners.
Oh my God. And like to the point where I'll like speak to Stephen like, did you hear that section? And he's like, yes, and aren't we tragic? We absolutely are.
Yeah.
Okay, sustainable fashion hack.
Ooh, sustainable fashion hack. I'm trying to think of something that's a hack. I mean...
Or like sustainable fashion advice.
Advice. Again, Okay, I'm going to say alter your clothes, because if it fits you really well, you're going to be so much more inclined to keep it, because A, you'll have spent the money on it. So even if it's a fast fashion piece of clothing, if you've then spent 20 or 30 quid getting it not lengthened, never for me, getting it shortened, getting it taken in, getting a pocket moved, whatever it may be, then you are going to be more attached to the item. And also, arguably, I would say it would be harder to sell on, because you can't stick it on Vinted and be like, also now much shorter. Well, you can, but so yeah, I would say tailor your clothes so that they fit your body perfectly, and then you will be so much more inclined to want to keep them forever.
That is, and also it's so nice to kind of plan those tweaks as well.
Yeah. Constantly shortening things. And we are just constantly shortening things, aren't we?
I always feel so aggrieved that when I have to like take my jeans up or like chop the bottoms off, and you look at how much material there is.
I keep loads of it because I'm like, this has got to be useful for something. It can be a patch on something.
Yeah, like, one day maybe a headband.
A denim leopard headband.
Okay, staycation or short haul flight.
So I was very much being a 90s baby of the generation where we would hop on a plane and go to Spain. Yeah. And if we weren't in Spain, we weren't on holiday. Very fortunate, I appreciate that. But we would literally go to Spain all the time. It was just our kind of home away from home. That is how I was brought up. I didn't therefore actually see that much of the UK as a child growing up. And I totally understand now. My sister has 2 kids. She always says that it's so much easier for the kids to just be running around the pool or whatever, you know, whereas in the UK you can't guarantee the weather. But as an adult now who is married and can make my own decisions and book my own holidays, particularly in lockdown, obviously we were kind of forced to staycation a little bit more. And very naively until that point, I think I had totally overlooked how gorgeous our country is and how much of it we hadn't seen. I'd never been to the South Coast until about a year ago. A couple of years ago, because I'm from the north. Like I grew up on the coast in Lincolnshire, so I was like, well, I've been to the beach in the UK, surely they're all the same. Spoiler alert, they're not.
Oh my gosh, because I grew up on the south coast and went to the north coast near Northumberland. Well, no, not Northumberland. What am I trying to say? Bamburgh Castle.
Yeah.
The other day, and it's like has a totally different feel.
Yeah.
And I do think that is the beauty of doing this job, where you go around the country like,
yeah,
holy moly, who knew all these places were so gorgeous?
Exactly. So I've definitely very much enjoyed the last few years staycationing more, but I love the sun. I think I actually suffer with a bit of sad seasonal depression when the weather's rubbish. I really struggle. So we're all guilty of desperately chasing the sun, I think.
I know, that is the sort of like real sort of contentious point. And I think things like, how do we feel about flying? What are some things you do? We will 100% come on to those in future podcasts. Okay, similar question to what you asked me. Most starstruck celebrity encounter when you were like, I cannot be cool in this situation.
Oh my goodness. I'm never cool in any situation. So there is that. But to be honest, I did go on just after I'd hosted the show on Radio 1, I ended up going on the breakfast show with Greg James, not in person. We just chatted over the phone. It was he does like yesterday's quiz.
Oh yeah.
So the fact that we weren't even face to face is. And I had hosted a show, so I should be able to kind of hold my own in the company of people on that station. But I think because he is one of the reasons that I love this industry so much and have wanted to work in this industry. You know when somebody means like that much to you? Then I get to them, I was like, like chatting to the producer, like, see if I hosted a show, so I'm really cooling down with the kids now and I really know like the inner workings of Radio 1. He was like, so you know how the quiz goes, like, you know, blah, 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 blah. And then Greg's voice came on and he was like, Abbie, you're on yesterday's quiz, but of course you've just hosted a show on Radio 1, haven't you? And I was like, yep. did exactly what everybody tells you not to do, which was give one-word answers, be really short and really shy, and I just was really starstruck. Not even at the fact that I was on Radio 1, because I've been on Radio 1, but the fact that I was talking to Greg James, one of my absolute heroes and idols. So let's just hope that we're never face-to-face, because if that's the garbage that comes out my mouth when we're on the phone...
But do you know what? I didn't meet Greg James, but I did meet Chris Smith with the News, who is no longer Chris Smith with the News.
But will always be.
Yeah.
Will always be Chris Smith with the News.
And he obviously writes with Greg James now.
Yeah.
And his wife, she's an amazing photographer, and I'd gone there to get some headshots. And I don't know how Greg James had come up. And she was like, oh, my husband's Chris Smith, as in Chris Smith with the News. And then he came down, and I did a similar thing where I was like, I could not make any words. Mortifying. Okay. How would you describe yourself in 3 words?
Okay. Chaotic, hardworking, tenacious.
I would 100% agree with those. How would you describe me in 3 words?
Wonderful.
Oh.
Organised. And I'm going to have to group these together. Fiercely intelligent.
I'm overwhelmed. Oh gosh, thank you. Okay, and last question. Sustainability goal or thing that you want to do in 2025?
Green Queens. Launch a sustainability-based podcast and just generally try and make it part of the everyday conversation in a really non-terrifying, non-judgmental, non-statisticky way.
Yeah.
This podcast has been something I've dreamt of doing for years, and we've talked about doing for literally years as well. We've even sat here and done this in recent years. So the fact that 2025 is going to be the year of Green Queens and actually making it a real fully fledged thing, even if the only people that listen are Ted the dog and Chris, who's sat behind the camera right now, it would be wonderful if you two start to make more sustainable decisions.
I think that's it, and I think that kind of brings us really nicely to a close. Like, this podcast is going to be about addressing the nuances in the conversation, kind of going through some of the things that are just generally confusing or feel inaccessible, as well as the stuff that is exciting and easy things that people can do straight away, and to kind of get that landscape of how can we talk about this in a fun way, an engaging way, and really just help everyone make a difference, as well as come away with a few really juicy nuggets that you can share with your friends over wine.
Exactly. And like, we're in a really fortunate position, I think, to both be working in this space at the moment at a time which is really exciting, and so it kind of feels rude, if anything, that we're not sharing some of the exciting stuff that we're coming across, especially because I don't know about you, but I get asked all the time for various bits of information. How does this work? Why is that happening? What's going on with this weather? Like, let's answer it to everyone.
And I think that is the really important thing. We are constantly learning and accruing all this sort of information, but we are by no means sort of the beacons of sustainability who live completely virtuously with regards to the planet.
No.
So this is also our journey of discovery as well.
Yeah. 100%.
Which we're inviting everyone to join us on.
Welcome to the Green Queens Club.
Yeah. Well, on that note.
Yeah. We'll see you next week for more of the same, less talking about us, less self-indulgent, but we did feel like it was quite important to kind of introduce ourselves.
Yes, definitely.
And kick things off properly. But the fun really gets going next week.
Next week. See you then.
Bye. You were like, do I look at the camera?
And I sort of did like, not looking at either. Well, see you then.
Yeah.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Green Queens. If you did and you'd like to hear more, we'd be so very grateful if you could like, subscribe and join the Green group chat for weekly episodes.